Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is People About Nation. This is where the spotlight is on the solution rather than the problem. Today I have a very special guest. I've been trying to hound him down for the longest while in dealing with this issue, which is near and dear to me personally, one of corruption. And we have the great Mr. Afra Raymond with me today. Good day, good day to you, sir. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Mr. Munro. I'm glad you didn't have to hang me too long. But I'm pleased to be here on the show, and thank you for the invitation. I've been on Synergy TV a few times to discuss different current affairs, and it's always been a very good occasion. Synergy has this sort of typecast as a music and a young people's channel, but I've always known it to have good discussions. So I'm pleased to be asked back, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Now, in light of this, the current air and atmosphere surrounding corruption in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a tendency to sensationalize things, hype them up, and then look for the next big fix.
Yes.
More so to speak.
Yes.
And my fear is that we roll over and we just bypass issues.
Yes.
We deal with them frivolously, and we have no outcomes that really come out of things because of that culture and nature that we seem to be perpetuating.
Yeah.
You know, so in this program and the movement that's supposed to really come out of this program is really focused on open forum discussions, how we could take these discussions, formalize them, streamline them, put them into a medium and a forum whereby we can lobby as a collective. Yes. But we'll get into that, you know, as we go further into the discussion. But firstly, if you could give me a brief synopsis of yourself, an introduction, to Mr. Raymond, and your career, life, and how you got into the whole anti-corruption drive.
Well, you know, I could tell you're a young person from the fact that you asked that question.
Yes, yes.
Because when you get to my age, it's not possible.
I thought you'd see it.
It's not possible to give a brief synopsis of my life and my career. I could tell you a few things. I mean, I'm a chartered surveyor by profession. I've served in various offices. I've been on different boards. I've been president of the Institute of Surveyors of Trinidad and Tobago. I run the company Raymond and Peer Limited, which is a valuation firm in the country.
I don't realize that, you know.
Yeah. I also have been I'm the immediate past president of the Joint Consultative Council for the construction industry, which used to be an active group around construction and corruption issues. The group appears to have gone silent. I'm saying that for you all who are listening, you appear to have gone silent. And we would get to that because I will be naming names and calling amounts and so on and so on. Lost their voice and so on, like a lot of other groups. And this is a very important question of nation building.
Yes.
This isn't about scandal and this isn't about bacchanal. This is about continuing the work of very important forebears. When we look at how we have been denuded of our wealth and robbed at gunpoint and otherwise, back to the Atlantic slave trade, the whole trickery of indentureship,
yes,
the whole independence experiment in the Caribbean, and how we come to be here. And here not just as a physical space, so we're sitting in a room on Arapita Avenue, but here in terms of a situation the country is in, which is what you alluded to when you started.
Absolutely.
One of the phrases people use when we do the popular reading on this thing is the whole question of economic hitmen.
You know
so
what?
There's a book called The Confessions of Economic Hitmen.
I actually have a clip on that, you know.
Yeah, and the fact about it is that we have economic hitmen in our midst now. Some of them we voted for. And I will give examples of that as we get into the program later.
Right. Well, with that being said, give me a brief overview and definition in your understanding of corruption for the audience so that they will understand the premise of which we're operating on.
Yeah, well, corruption is basically somebody using their influence, their power to make a decision to benefit their friends and their family and their financiers. You could define it in 5 Fs. I think it's very important to have these succinct ways to define these complex issues. So the 5 Fs I use are friends, family, and financiers find favor.
I like that. Friends, family, and financiers find favor. That is the 5 Fs. That's how the thing operates. And let us be absolutely clear. Corruption is not restricted to the public sector. Because a lot of the discussion we have about corruption talks about corruption in the public sector. And the ministry of this, and the local government of that,
and the state enterprise and the big House of Assembly and all of that kind of discussion that goes around and around the country. But in fact, I could tell you as somebody who's in the private sector,
yes,
that within the private sector there have a lot of corruption.
Well,
that has nothing to do with any ministry.
Yeah.
It is just people ripping off each other and scheming to get better of each other and so on. A lot of that takes place in the private world.
In the last program I had on Monday, part of it dealt strictly with the fact that we have a bribe culture now that we perpetuate in Trinidad and Tobago on an individual level. I'm talking about just for someone in the service, as you say, public or private service at any level to do their job, just to do their job now requires something under the table. It's almost an unspoken rule now in our utility companies and other private sector institutions.
I mean, I would say, before we go too much further, I would say, Mr. Munro, that in fact all of my work is curated in one place, and it could be found at afraraymond.net. My name is afraraymond.net. You can subscribe for free. I'm encouraging people who are viewing the program to subscribe for free, and you get all the notifications. You get my newspaper articles. I write in the Business Express. It appears in a Wednesday in the Express Business.
Okay.
I appear on TV shows like this. I appear on the radio. I give public lectures. I have one coming up in Tobago on the 22nd of May, which I'll talk about a little later on and so on. And I have those recorded, and they're also on my website. So I have all of my work collated in one place.
I actually did some extensive research, and I was very impressed with some of the work that you've done. In particular, I wanted to discuss the 3 myths discussed in the TED Talk. I mean, I think that is an important piece to discuss because from then it actually presented me with a lot of information and insights that I may not have normally looked at.
The 3 myths about corruption is actually really a very important TED Talk that we gave. And that TED Talk was on the 12th of December 2012.
You have to put it up as a split screen.
Yeah. And that TED Talk was one in which I spoke for about 18 minutes. Is my most popular talk. It's the most popular TED Talk coming out of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
And the 3 myths of corruption, to summarize, are: the first one is that it's not a crime. So in fact, if you ask most people about crime, if you talk about crime with friends and family, what you're actually discussing is that person whose neck got locked down last week. You're discussing a friend who was carjacked
violent crimes.
You're discussing somebody who attempted to rape a relative. You're discussing that kind of thing, murder and so on. And in fact, very seldom, if you have a discussion about crime, is anybody going to have front and center in that discussion financial crime, white collar crime, what we are calling under the single rubric of corruption. So that's the first thing. The first myth about corruption is that it isn't really a crime. That's the first myth, and we need to understand that that is nonsense. It is a crime. It is a very serious crime. And I'll explain how serious it is later. The second myth is that even if it's wrong, and we recognize that something is wrong about it, that's not right, it's actually not a very big thing. That's the second myth. The second myth is that, okay, so I had to pay Tom to get planning approval for these apartments I want to build in, I don't know, San Fernando. I had to pay Tom some money to get the thing done quickly. Tom is a fella I know from school, and Tom handled it for me. And it's not a big thing. It's a small amount of money. In fact, because it's a concealed thing, it's a crime, and people don't naturally speak about it, we don't know the extent of it, occasionally we get a glimpse into its size and its shape. And that glimpse could tell us that it is far more than a 5% or 10% of the cost of a project. In the history of our country, and we have studies that have shown that, $2 out of $3 was stolen or wasted. I mean, $2 out of $3. So we need to understand, it's a question of educating ourselves financially and economically about what is the size of the thing, what is the shape of the thing.
That blew my mind. You're talking about $2 out of $3
was stolen or wasted.
30 years ago,
was
either
stolen or wasted.
$2 out of $3 in the Bala report.
And the third myth, you got it right, Bala report, you were doing your reading, good. And the third myth, which is something that we need to identify it as a myth and dismantle it, is the idea that we can't do anything about it. The first myth is that it's not a crime. The second myth is that it's a small thing, so what you're talking about that anyway. And the third thing is that we can't do anything about it. And the fact is, we can do something about it. And more importantly, as a philosophical point, we must do something about it if we are to turn around the course of the country and put our country on a new path philosophically. Yes.
I love a quote that you gave. If you are not outraged, you haven't been paying attention that you saw on the Wall Street.
Absolutely.
But speaking about your first point, not a crime, I am wondering, do you think the statements made by the now Attorney General when he was putting forward the Civil Assets and Recovery Management Bill, where he said he's going after the gold chain wearing Mercedes Benz, don't you think that more or less lends to the narrative of who we target when dealing with corruption?
But of course, that was actually I felt it was unnecessary. I felt it was comical. It was fitting into a stereotype. It was either verging on racist or outright racist. I very much deplored that statement by Faris Al-Rawi. I was very sad when I heard it. I am involved in other things. I don't have time to comment on everything. I'll say it now. I found it was deplorable. What I will give as an example for listeners and viewers who may not be aware of what is the scope of the unexplained wealth provisions. Let me give an example of what happened. And it's an example I like. I don't have the exact names of the people, but there was a situation in Eastern Europe where a particular person had been president for a long time.
Yeah.
And the person had been alleged to be highly corrupt. That person's wife, who had never worked in government, had bought an apartment in London. I think it was like 9 or 10 million pounds. And was living in London and living a high life. There was an election, and the guy who was president lost the election. So it's somewhere in Eastern Europe. I've forgotten the country now. I don't know if it's Bulgaria or Poland or wherever it was. And having lost the election, the people who came into power, who came in on an anti-corruption ticket, kind of put him on charges, and he was going to face a trial. And the police in England, using unexplained wealth orders, because they have a thing in English, in the UK law called an unexplained wealth order, were able to present her with a demand.
To explain.
You haven't worked since you're 24 years old.
Right.
Your husband was a civil servant. How come you're living in this apartment that cost 10 million pounds? She couldn't answer. You have to show us how. We're not doubting that there's a deed.
True.
But how did you get there?
How did you get there?
And in fact, they were able to go to the High Court in England and take the apartment from her. Furthermore, in the course of the court case, they were able to show that her bill by Harrods, her shopping bill, the year before, had been about 720,000 pounds just in shopping. So this is the kind of wealth that sometimes gets looted from our countries. But the importance of that example is that not only does it clarify how the unexplained wealth arrangements work, because somebody may want to take a position, and some people who are protesting against it took a position, well, I didn't break any law. Well, in fact, the law is your wealth has to be capable of being explained. If you can't explain your wealth, you have broken the law. That's the first point. Secondly, the importance of it is that, in fact, too often, and I will say it here, some things I'm glad for the opportunity to express myself on these things. Too often, these provisions of international law and the forfeiture of assets and disgorgement and unlawful enrichment and so on are applicable and appear to be applicable to people of African descent and people who are black and brown. And I was very pleased, I have to say I was delighted to see that this European lady, who was the wife of a corrupt president, who was a European gentleman, had the apartment that was 10 million pounds taken from her. And that's why I would continue to use that example. Like the rest of you, I'm allowed to choose my examples.
Tell me something. The bill itself, is it active or is it not active yet?
What, the unexplained wealth? I don't think it is active yet. Okay. It'll take a while. All of these things, whether it's procurement or whistleblower or unexplained wealth, take time to put into place. And that is something that people need to understand. If it's a law that merely the police will be putting into place, a simple law, like, for example, a speed limit changes.
Right, that could be immediate.
We have policemen on the road already.
Right.
We have instruments to measure speed.
Right.
People understand from the road traffic regulation that a police car come behind you and the light is going, you have to pull over. So we have a set of arrangements that are already there.
The infrastructure is there.
And the law could change the number from 40 to 60. But if you're putting in place a new arrangement where there is no structure, like the procurement system or like the unexplained wealth system, you need to have proper administrative things in place. The example I would give just to support what it is I'm saying about new arrangements and the time to put them in place is the Central Tenders Board Act. Up until the procurement law passed in 2015, the main law to control how government did contracts for goods, works and services was the Central Tenders Board Act 1961. Okay. The Central Tenders Board Act 1961 was put in place by the Williams government as an attempt to deal with corruption that was widespread, particularly in local government. What people don't recognize, although the act is called, if you put it up online, you'll see Central Tenders Board Act 1961. What they don't recognize is that the first Central Tenders Board, the actual board of individuals who were sworn in to serve in that capacity, didn't actually take office until 1966. Oh. So although Dr. Williams was a powerful politician who had put things in place to deal with this question of corruption in tenders, yes, and they put a law in place.
It took 4 years.
It took 5 years.
5 years.
Before they could actually get people to agree to serve, swear them in and actually have all the things in place, the telephone lines, the stationery, the vehicles, the office building, appoint the staff.
You know what, I have a very important question based on that you just said. But before I ask, we have to go on a break.
No problem.
When we come back, we get more into this with Mr. Afra Raymond and myself, Keenan Munro. We'll be right back.
Thank you. Are we going good so far?
Welcome back and good afternoon to each and every one of you. Remember, we are having signals to Guyana, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent. Good afternoon to each and every one of you. Today we're dealing with corruption. This is People About Nation. My name is Keenan Munro and I'm joined today by Mr. Afra Raymond, someone who's at the front of the drive against corruption. And when we left off, he spoke about the fact that how long these policies and legislation take to get into place. Now, my question being, do you think then, from that perspective, with the current government doing it at this late stage in the game of their tenure, do you think that it's almost, or could be perceived as, a political ploy or instrument versus genuinely trying to get this implemented to see corruption meted out?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, and I'm not sure how worth it is spending time speculating on their political motives. That's not because I'm trying to give Dr. Rowley and his government a free pass. No. Far from it.
It's your opinion. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. But I mean, it's more than an opinion, Keenan, because I've been involved, for example, on the public procurement law. I was involved for years in a specific lobbying effort rooted in the professional class in the private sector to promote a new public procurement law. Right. So we had extensive meetings with Mr. Patrick Manning and his people. We had extensive meetings with Mrs. Kamla Prasad Besesa and her people when they were in government as a People's Partnership. And we had extensive meetings also with the current administration. So I could say to you that we are at the point where a number of these laws are going to come into effect. We are at a very interesting point in international affairs, so we have to place all of this in context. The grave error we could make here is to focus too narrowly on this personality or that personality or this party, the Balize or the Rising Sun or whatever. The fact is, Trinidad and Tobago, and I hate to use the phrase, but I have to, Trinidad and Tobago has found itself on a number of international blacklists.
Yes.
The fact is that Trinidad and Tobago's presence on those international blacklists is having an impact on our country financially at a major level.
Put up the chart that with Trinidad, excuse me, 1 second. The chart with Trinidad and Tobago's corruption index, World Corruption Index. You have it there? All right, can you put it up there for me, please?
And Mr. Munro, the fact is that we are not going to have an improved score in those important ratings. And I understand that the ratings, the way the system is set up.
Explain it a little for me. The international corruption.
No, I'm not there yet. We'll be there in a while. Okay. But I'm talking about the ratings that have put us on some financial blacklists from the European Union and from the United States and so on. And I am saying we're not going to have an improved ranking in those ratings until and unless we deal with certain things. Yes, I understand that the system is rigged. Yes, I understand that the system is racist. Yes, I understand. I've done considerable reading on it. I understand fully that the main centers of money laundering on the planet are Wall Street and the City of London. I understand those things. And if it's not Wall Street and the City of London, it is that there's a town in the States where they have all these companies registered. A particular town where it all happens. And I understand those things. But the fact of the matter is, Trinidad and Tobago is a tiny country and we are in this fix. And the only way for us to get out of this fix, old talk can only take you so far.
True.
They have to hold people. Understand what's happening now? I'm telling you all what's happening. They have to hold people. You have to hold people with proper charges. You have to have a proper quality of evidence, which is why they brought in a lot of police and forensic people from foreign. And you have to put those people on a proper lawful trial.
No commission of inquiry.
And we have to put some serious people behind bars. And I am not for a moment pretending that sort of wrongdoing is restricted to one side or the next.
No.
But the position the country finds itself in, after decades of faffing around and files being lost, and Mr. Kohler had flying out. Remember that? Mr. Manning talked to him the night before. The next morning he was gone.
Yep.
I hope you listen to this, Kohler. Flying out. And all of these games.
And everything is just commission of inquiry.
And everything just passing in the night.
And millions upon millions of dollars.
We have come to the point where, in fact, Trinidad and Tobago, as a state, irrespective of who was in power, somebody has to pay. It's like one of those grim games of adult musical chairs. The music has stopped. The game is up. And if you're still standing, you are it. And that's what is going on now. So that is the context for all of these things. When you talk about Trinidad being blacklisted, Financial Action Task Force, unexplained wealth, whistleblowing, all of these things are coming together because, in my opinion, my experience, that we are under considerable pressure to bring some serious things into action. And even if an election was to occur sometime in the next 18 months, I expect there's going to be one, and there's to be a transfer of power from A party to B party. The new party coming in, whichever one it is, would face a similar pressure because the country is under that situation right now. Now, coming to the question about the Corruption Perception Index that you asked me about. The Corruption Perception Index is a tool devised by Transparency International, which is the world's leading anti-corruption body based out of Berlin.
I know we are currently at 41. In 2016, we were at 35, I believe.
Right. Now, that's 41 is supposed to be an improvement. But in fact, it is actually still a very sobering score. And let me explain why. There are about 170-something countries that are measured by Transparency.
South Africa is less corrupt, according to the index.
Yes.
Jamaica is less corrupt.
Yes.
Rwanda is less corrupt.
Absolutely.
You've seen some of those countries that you would not expect to show that Trinidad is more corrupt than that.
Yeah. So we have a problem to deal with. First of all, the improvement has been marginal. And secondly, the country is in the bottom half of the score. Anyhow you take it, if you're measuring a score on something, the best possible score is 100.
Yes.
And the top countries have scores above 90. And the worst possible score is 0.
And Scandinavian countries are the ones that are topping the list.
The middle of the mark, what in Trinidad you would call a pass mark. Trinidad and Tobago is 50.
So
we have never gotten to 50.
No.
So we have a lot of work to do. It doesn't matter who's in power. We have a lot of work to do. We have to get to the position where we have an effective police force. We have an effective whistleblower legislation. We have an effective public procurement system. We have an effective court system for these criminal acts of procurement and white-collar crime. I'm saying criminal acts, and it needs to be effective because we cannot have a situation going on like Piaco, where those preliminary inquiry still going on 21 years later. We need to have a situation where if somebody gets held, they face the court swiftly, their matter is adjudicated swiftly, and if they have to be sentenced to imprisonment, that happens swiftly. And this will not change until powerful people go behind bars for a proper dose of prison.
235-5325, that's the number to call. 235-5325, join the conversation. You can speak to Mr. Raymond and myself. Join the conversation today. The lines are open now. Let's get a little into CL Financial.
Sure. Sure.
I know you did a lot of work with CL
Yes.
Financial, and you recently acquired the documents pertaining to the disbursement of funds.
Some of the money, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
could you get into that with us and
Sure.
give us some education?
Well,
on
the
it?
CL Financial bailout happened after the group collapsed at
Yes.
the end of 2008. Now, it really was an enormous collapse economically, and the expressed fear at the time was that if it wasn't bailed out, there would be
The Lehman Brothers effect.
there would be contagion to the system and so on. And indeed, CLICO held a large amount of the nation's pensions and so on. But what was actually happening there was this. You have a company that was running and had built a model, because businesses are run on models. It had built a model where, in fact, instead of borrowing money from the bank, like most of us will borrow money from a bank, because their main organ,
One second there, caller. Hold on.
yeah, because their main organ was CLICO. CLICO was used as an instrument, as an implement to harvest money
Oh,
from prospective policyholders. So in fact, what you got to understand, another company trying to raise money to do this, that, and the other would have to borrow money. And you have three places you can borrow money from. You could borrow money from your shareholders, so you can do what is called a rights issue. So you issue more shares, you borrow money from your shareholders. CLICO didn't do that.
one second. Hello,
You could-
good day.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, tomorrow.
Good afternoon.
I know if I call you once, but I don't know exactly what I spoke about. But I say the only future in this Trinidad, not only Trinidad, the whole world, you have a change in political system. You see party business, we have to forget that. Unless we forget that party business, I know the system many years ago. It's called a community state. And the way
You're sounding a bit muffled, my
I have
friend.
a bad code.
Yeah, but call us back because we're not hearing you properly, right? So, if you could give us a call back, because you're not coming through quite clearly. Numbers to call 235-5325. You could join us in the conversation.
Right, let me just quickly go through that.
Yeah.
So you could borrow money by borrowing money from your shareholders through a rights issue. You could raise money by borrowing money from the bank or professional lenders, people who have set up institutions to lend money. Or in the third case of CLICO,
Issue.
you could create a product, or as Naipaul said, a thing without a name. You create a product and get everybody to buy that. So in fact, the people who buy it don't have shares.
Oh.
And the people who buy it don't have a document like a loan document. They have another type of document, which is called an insurance policy. Another type of document, which is called an EFPA, an executive flexible premium annuity. The word annuity all over the world generally means a long-term investment product.
So they were
if
using
you have a child,
insurance money, they were
Yes.
creating policies
Correct.
to get money
Correct.
to then use.
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
good
for
day.
joining the
Good day.
discussion.
I recognize insurance. We have a problem. The problem of combating any sort of thievery in its wide scope is tribalism. What we try to do is justify wrongdoing by tribalism, and we are not effectively dealing with it. Now, and we know the international systems are corrupt. We know all these things, but it doesn't justify there's somebody wrong here in Trinidad and Tobago that it should not be dealt with. And that's the long and short of it.
Okay.
And for some reason, we Trinidadians are not hitting the nail on the head. We're not dealing with the issues. The media will talk about how many things have happened before. If you happen with Ram, and who do this, and who did that before, what call the heart, and all these things should be dealt with, every single one. But it doesn't matter what order. Once you catch a person that has been doing wrong in public office or non-public office, it doesn't matter where they are, they should be dealt with effectively.
Thank you for your
and
contribution.
I think we need to move away from the tribalism and deal with the issue.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
thank you. Well, I don't support the tribal approach, so I thank the caller. And I wanted to say that, in fact, what would happen, how an annuity works, just to give it quickly capsulate. If you have your first child, you would buy an annuity so that at 21 years old, your child will have this
Yes.
amount of money. All over the world, an
Yes, that
annuity
is
is a
what- yeah.
long-term investment product.
Yes.
In Trinidad and Tobago, the only place on the planet, the longest annuity Clico was selling was 2 years. So the EFPA, the last word is A, means annuity.
Yeah, but how did our system
That was
allow
actually
that to happen?
approved by our regulators.
That is what I'm
in the
saying.
Ministry
How
of
was
Finance,
that approved?
In the Ministry of Finance,
Hold on a
Supervisor
second,
of
hold on.
Insurance, it was approved and it was carried out in this country. So that was a third way for them to raise money.
Wow. Hello,
and that
good
is what
afternoon.
happened.
One last
Yeah,
one.
hello.
Hi, good afternoon. Keep it quick. We have to go on a break. Good day, good day.
Good day. Good day.
Dennis here, Afra.
Yes.
How do you feel about recent arrests and charges in the court? When you compare that to the 20-year-old Haitian thief, do you feel that we have to wait for the 20 years?
Okay.
All right, thanks for that.
Well, I mean, let me just say to you, how do I feel about it? I think that it was pretty common knowledge, certainly speaking for myself, as somebody who litigated against the state, both within JCC and within my private capacity during the People's Partnership time in government, that they were over-lawyered. So I can remember on one occasion going to court in the Invaders Bay case with JCC, and our attorneys were there. We had a senior counsel and a junior counsel, and Mr. Martino was leading the state's team, and he had 3 senior juniors, Mr. Ramdeen, Mr. Shiv Sharma, and Mr. Ramkisoon, and there were 3 people below them who were young ladies who were working in the state sector. So Mr. Martin, there was a team of 7 lawyers in that case that they lost resoundingly. So it was clear to me and to anybody else who had a serious engagement and a serious thought about it, even if we aren't lawyers, that the state was over-lawyering almost willfully. And the kind of thing that made you wonder. We all heard these things. I had never seen any evidence of it. And let me say to you, when you ask me whether it'll go 20 years or the other thing, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. What I would say is that I hope not. And certainly, putting it back in the wider context, I started off with in my earlier remarks. The country, as a country, we are under pressure now to operate these things differently, to show that we are serious.
Yes.
And in fact, that kind of thing that went on, I don't want to disrespect the legal system, that kind of thing that it's still going on. The preliminary inquiry that's 21 years old. That kind of thing is not going to get any good marks to Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll be furthering this session. This is People About Nation. We'll be right back.
Sure.
Welcome back, my friends, my family. This is People About Nation. Today we are discussing corruption. We left off on the point of CL Financial and the annuity that they developed as a money-making instrument, or really just to generate funds for them to invest as an annuity. 2-year annuity, craziness.
Yes, yes. Well, they borrowed the money. I mean, and we have to be clear that as an approved financial product, there wasn't anything illegal. I'm just describing it in financial terms. I'm not ascribing any illegality to it. Let's be
but
quite
the
clear.
nature of it is something
what
that
was
is-
done.
is
So the choice was made. We're not raising money by a share issue, because a share issue has all kinds of implications in terms
Right.
of prospectus, and you have to give a lot of details. And you want to give all those details. We're not going to the bank to borrow money. You have to give plenty of details there too.
True.
We're going to create a product. We're going to put our sales force to work, and we're going to sell that product to raise money to do these other things. That is what happened. In the case of Clico, it was the EFPA. In the case of CIB, it was something called an INC, an investment note certificate. So they created one for corporate people. Now, cutting a long story short, the thing didn't work in total, and the group found itself in a problem. And on the 13th of January, 2009, Mr. Dupree wrote to the governor of the central bank saying, listen, water more than flour, we need to get a bailout. On the 23rd of January, it's very interesting, on the 23rd of January of 2009, which is 7 days after that,
Yeah, really,
they
yes.
actually had an AGM at Hilton. And at that AGM, the chairman's report was glowing and spoke about the future and the prospects for the future and so on.
7 days after.
Yes. On the 16th of January, which was 3 days after they wrote that letter, they paid themselves a dividend of $3 a share. One of the people who received that dividend was this then Minister of Finance, Karen Nunez Teixeira, who was a shareholder of the CL Financial Group. And of course, on the 30th of January, they kept this historic press conference when they announced that the group was in trouble. It had to be bailed out. There was the governor of the central bank, Mr. Ewart Williams, at that time, Mrs. Karen Nunes Teixeira, who was at that time the Minister of Finance, and of course Mr. Lawrence Dupree, who was the executive chairman of the whole group and so on. Now, that bailout was on really unprecedented terms because basically no amount of money was stated. So it was a loan for any amount of money that was necessary, or open check. There was no interest. There's only interest on the first $5 billion at less than half what the prevailing rate of interest was. The rest of the money has been lent to them interest-free.
Wow.
Okay? The total interest, and there's a way that we can calculate what the total interest is on a sum of money. The total interest is called a weighted average cost of capital.
Yes.
The weighted average cost of capital of the money lent in the CL Financial bailout is less than 1%. So in fact, the money that Mr. Dupree and Mr. Montai and the other shareholders of CL Financial have had to repay has been loaded with interest of less than 1%. I worked it out once, I think it's 0.78 or something ridiculous. Okay? And none of us could get a loan from the bank to do anything serious for that small amount of money. But they were able to get that money from our treasury.
Yes. Finest.
Yes. So in fact, something is wrong about it. As I said to people, it's wrong, wrong, wrong. It's wrong like a Crick's biscuit. It's really, really wrong. The point about it is this: I've been finding out and taking the government to court to find out who got that money.
Right.
It's a matter of first principles.
So you haven't gotten that information yet?
I got part of the money, information on money paid, which is the EFPA. Who were the people who received money from the EFPA? And I'm now have them in court, and my next hearing date is on the 4th of July this year to actually get the rest of the information.
I'd like to have you back so we can do a follow-up on that, of course. Let's skip over to Tobago.
Sure. What's happening in Tobago?
I remember just on the break we were speaking about sandals, and I really want to bring some information out to the public on it.
Sure. Let me give you a quick summary on sandals, because what needs to be understood is that the largest hotel in the history of Trinidad and Tobago was being proposed in Tobago Sandals. It was not just the largest hotel in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, it would have been the largest hotel ever built by the Sandals Group. So it was the biggest ever, according to Marshall Montano, GOAT, the greatest of all time. And at least that's what they wanted us to believe. So they signed an agreement on the 10th of October 2016 with Sandals. And that agreement was an agreement that in fact contained the terms and conditions and the framework of what they were going to do. And let's put all this in context. In the rest of the Caribbean, countries don't have the money we have.
Yes.
And they invite a hotelier to come to take a piece of land to build a hotel. The hotelier gets there, and the hotelier will design and construct and fit and furnish the hotel. They have invested the capital. And to encourage that type of investment, the governments in those countries will give tax holidays. That is the arrangement in the rest of the Caribbean.
That's normal standard
in
procedure.
Trinidad and Tobago, we have a different arrangement because we have money that is more abundant. So the three biggest hotels in the country, Mr. Munro, are in fact state-owned.
Right.
So the Trinidad Hilton, the Hyatt Regency down on the waterfront, and Tobago Hilton, which is now known as Magdalena, those are hotels where in fact the land belongs to the country, and the construction and the design and the fitting and the furnishing, we paid for it. In those arrangements, we have something called a management agreement, where the hotel company runs the hotel because they have an international profile, and so Hilton or Hyatt,
so basically
and all the connections internationally, and the money is split in accordance with the management arrangement. Yes.
Who oversees those financial transactions?
Let me finish this piece. We get into the punchline of the joke. Let's not get off track. In Tobago Sandals, it was different. Marshall Montano used that phrase this year, the greatest of all time. GOAT. Well, in fact, I want to say Tobago Sandals is already the greatest of all time. Because in that deal,
that was a good race.
In that deal, we had the state was going to spend all the money. We were giving over a prime piece of property that was environmentally sensitive.
Yes.
We were spending all the money to design, construct, fit and furnish, and we were given a tax holiday. So in fact, where was the benefit for the country?
It had none.
That is what happened. That is what our government signed to. Minister Shampaka just signed that document. I went to court for 9 months. I had them under litigation for 9 months to get a copy of that document. They published it the night before the court case. They knew they were going to get licks in court in the morning. And the minister who published it said, no, it's nothing to do with Raymond. And the next morning, the lawyer went and gave it to me in court. Okay? But in fact, if you analyze the terms and conditions of the MOU, that is what we were going to do. We were going to build the hotel at our expense.
Yes.
on this environmentally sensitive piece of land, and we were going to give Mr. Butch Stewart and his company Sandals, and good for them to be able to negotiate it. No wonder they were smiling in every picture.
But
I would have been smiling in every picture.
You know
too.
about the internal policies with Sandals? For one, if you have a worker there, they cannot take a tip.
I heard about that.
Two, most of the goods and services that they acquired outside of the country in order to have standardization.
But all of that is in the agreement.
And because the hotel itself is encapsulated, it's an all-inclusive hotel, what would really have been the benefit for Tobago and spillover of the tourists to stimulate the economy if everything would have been encapsulated into that space?
Yes, those are real questions. So it was a bad deal, anyhow you count it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, and to be frank, Mr. Munro, I don't actually think that my advocacy or my involvement is what stopped Sandals from going ahead with the deal. I think there were other things at work.
Yeah, but sharing the light.
Yes.
Holding a candle to an issue.
Sure. I think that in fact what was decisive in breaking it down was perhaps the environmental issues, which I did not focus on. Okay, I mentioned it here.
Okay, thanks. We have a caller. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon. That's important in itself. Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Yeah, good day.
Keenan, I'm glad to see you on the TV squad. I remember the class.
I remember how you're going, man.
People and everything. I just see that it is not. Glad to see you back, and I just calling to congratulate on your program, and I'll be watching it. To edify myself. Almost 70 years. I don't mind you that busy to me, but you're very educational. The other time, you're a black guy too, and you know, the guy like you bring back, the guy used to be with everybody glasses. He's a very educated guy too, so I wish you all the best.
You'll be seeing him on the program shortly.
Black people listen to you because you're a bright guy and you're very informative. So you have a good day and all the best.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We want a procurement system.
Yes, and before we go on, we have to go on a break now. How long we have? We have a minute. Okay. Well, this last segment, I wanted to first introduce the is it a system?
Yes.
Describe it for me. It's a procurement system that Mr. Afra Raymond is spearheading that we put in place to help deal with some of the corruption.
Right.
Could you get into it?
Well, let me just start off by saying that I was part of a group that was advocating for the procurement system. The procurement system has now been embodied in a law called the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act.
All right.
A new body has been created called the Office of Procurement Regulation. So while at one time I was advocating for it, and I still am very much in support of it, I have no official capacity, let's be very clear. Okay. There's a body that's been appointed, they're down on the waterfront, and how it will work is that all transactions in public money will come under the control of the Office of Procurement Regulation.
Okay.
At the moment, the Central Tenders Board Act has actually been created with so many exemptions and fractures that it's possible to slip something through a ministry and then slip something through a state enterprise, because state enterprises aren't under the Central Tenders Board Act.
Okay.
The new system is a big umbrella in which all transactions in public money are to be controlled by this modern and effective system. It includes whistleblowing provisions. It includes very powerful punishments and penalties and so on, and I expect the effect to be transformative on our country.
Right, but the effects, but Trinidad and Tobago's current system, culture and provisions, do you think that we're at the stage where it can be effective?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Okay, all right.
The decisive thing is the punishments and the whistleblowing provisions.
That aspect those are the things that are concerning to me. Because when you hear the current opposition leader saying that if we pass whistleblowing legislation, we'll be encouraging a society of news carriers, that is extremely concerning to me.
The hashtag is morals of a mango thief.
Morals of a mango thief.
On that note,
and on that note, we will be right back. People About Nation.
I think that's it. I think you said that's it.
That's it? Oh my goodness, the time went so far, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you very much.
They say time flies when you're having fun. It's true.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
It was all good. Thanks.
All right. God bless you.